Hey everybody, Joe Murray just sitting here on a Friday afternoon. Hope everyone is enjoying their Friday. I think it is Friday. Sometimes you have to remind yourself that. But a lot to talk about today on the podcast. Brandon Cooks on the move again. Bill O'Brien gets a ton of flack for the trades that he's made, but the Rams not very smart when it comes to that one. So I'll talk about that in just a little bit. I'll be joined by James Stewart of 98.5 The Sports Hub and the highly rated Wrestling Inside the Ropes podcast, him and Mike Riley. Of course, this was WrestleMania week, so we'll get his thoughts on that. The horse odds are out. I'll tell you my favorite that will begin this Sunday. I believe ESPN will broadcast those. People will be live on Zoom doing the horse tournament. I'll have some musings and I'll tell you what's going on this weekend and highlight next week's show and guest. I'll bring in my guest today. His name is James Stewart. He is from 98.5 The Sports Hub. He's a 20-year radio veteran and the host of the highly rated Wrestling Inside the Ropes podcast with Mike Riley. Happy Friday to you, Jimmy.
Hi, Joe. Thanks for having me on the show. 20-year radio veteran, boy, and I don't look a day over 60.
All right, so I do want to get your radio story in a little bit. We'll do all that.
Go read my book.
I know. When that probably will happen. We'll see who you'd write that with. I'm sure you could find maybe a local wrestler or maybe not even maybe a famous wrestler.
I can do a What Happened When podcast on my radio career.
I'm in on that, but this one just off the bat today, Jimmy, for all those wrestling geeks out there, the old best of luck in their future endeavors. We know what that means from WWE. Effective today, WWE and the Revival have agreed on their immediate release from WWE. We wish them well and all the best in their future endeavors. The Revival, hyped up to be one of the best tag teams, had a great run in NXT. Why didn't it work on the big roster there, Jimmy?
Because Vince McMahon's vision of them was different than what Hunter's vision was of them on NXT. So when you go from NXT, which is the fan-friendly, everybody's there to have a good time, to Vince McMahon, we're sports entertainment, how can we change you up? That's where the difference is. And for all the great matches that the Revival had in NXT, like, name me a bad match in NXT. And they're more wrestlers than they are characters. And so that might not fit in the Vince McMahon world of Raw and SmackDown.
So my whole thing with the Revival is this, like, they've wanted out for a long time. This shouldn't be surprising. I know you and Mike have discussed that on your podcast, but they just let them go. And now we know that there's another promotion here. If you see my t-shirt today, All Elite Wrestling. Well, they just pick up other stars that are cast-offs. I mean, Brody Lee's getting this push now. Chris Jericho, obviously, Cody Rhodes, and we'll
Matt Hardy.
And I was just going to bring up Matt Hardy, who's now going to go
Jon Moxley's the champion.
Boom, and Sean Spears, if you want to, bring him up as well. He's coming along.
10.
They're coming along. But my whole thing is this: if WWE finds these great talents and hires these great talents, why can't it work out? But yet they'll go there. They'll fight the Young Bucks. It will be the biggest thing going on. It will be talked about for a long time. And I mean, that was a spoiler. Years ago, they said they'll be fighting the Young Bucks. That's going to happen. I don't know what the next pay-per-view probably for AEW or two down the line. I don't understand how they can't hang on to talent, but yet AEW can all of a sudden make it work with these guys.
I think it's part of the creative process of WWE. I think WWE is just hoarding talent so that other people don't get them. But if you come to WWE, are you getting a push? Are you getting creative input? Is your cash okay? Like, there are people who are just happy re-signing and getting paid to sit at home. I know this is fact. There are others who you can offer them a whole bunch of money, but they want creative input because that's who they are. That's who they want to be. They want to have fun at their job. And if it's a little bit less money, that's okay to them. Matt Hardy and Brody Lee have both publicly said on Chris Jericho's podcast that they got offered a ton of money to stay, and they chose to leave. And it's not like we're going to be holding bake sales for Matt Hardy and Brody Lee working at AEW, but they wanted to go out and be creative and show that they can be stars. John Moxley was the same way. John Moxley was counting the days until he got out of WWE. I listened to Taz do a podcast recently, and Taz was offered a new contract right before WrestleMania. He's like, "No, man, I want to go home. Like, I'm tired of Vince yelling in my ear. I'm tired of being micromanaged." And there are people who just feel that way. Like, they're fine with money, and they can tell the boss, "No, I don't want to do that. I'm going to go somewhere else and do that." Or I'm just going to go home and live financially independent, which that's kind of the American dream, is to be financially independent, isn't it?
Very, very true there. Jimmy Stewart.
But Joe, can I
go ahead.
ask you a question?
Go ahead, of course.
So what do you think about AEW taking all of these WWE people? Is there a criticism to be levied at AEW where they're supposed to be the young roster that that's new and different, and yet their top people, their top performers, their top wrestlers are Jericho, Moxley, Matt Hardy, Brody Lee?
Well, I just think that they're taking all
Jim Ross is the voice.
Yeah, and Ross is different, but I think that they're taking them, and you just talked about freedom and flexibility and creative control. That's what AEW is all about, right? And the fact that these guys can go there and be themselves, like John Moxley, he was fine. He was fine in WWE. He didn't have to change anything. He just didn't like the way things were for him in the schedule, as you mentioned. He goes to AEW, and now he's the champ. I mean, he can be what he wants to be, work when he wants. And I think that's the thing, is like, one's the country club, the other people think is the big stage. I think at some points it just really does come down to, what's most important to you. And it sounds like at this point it's about that freedom. So that's why I think AEW is making it work. Jimmy Stewart is here. He's from 98.5 The Sports Hub. He's also from Wrestling Inside the Ropes. We get some chats coming in. People can join the show. Send in your chats. People are still waiting for the Edge Orton match to wrap up. That was pretty long. People saying, "What's up, Jay Stu?" Our buddy Rich Shirtley, boots to asses. Want to talk a little violence.
Love violence. Need more violence in my life.
With Jay Stu.
The thing I would say about the Randy Orton Edge match is it didn't sing to me, but I mean, Bret Hart called Edge and said it was one of the best pieces of business he's ever seen. So Edge took that and was like, if Bret Hart's calling me and saying it's beautiful, then okay, like, I'll go with that because it sang to Bret Hart. It didn't sing to me. And that's I think what people in wrestling don't seem to understand is the ice cream shop that had chocolate, vanilla, strawberry, mint chip, all these different flavors of ice cream. Wrestling is a variety show. So Charlotte Flair and Rhea Ripley sings to me. Randy Orton and Edge didn't sing to me. The Firefly Funhouse sung to me. Undertaker and AJ Styles sung to me. The Gargano Ciampa match the other night, liked the story, liked the violence, but didn't necessarily need it edited and shot like an action movie.
Okay, and that's what WWE does, right? They're good at making movies. I do want to get into WrestleMania.
We make movies, pal.
Damn it, we make movies. I don't do a good Vince. You do. So I do want to get into more wrestling stuff in a little bit, but
God damn it, Joe.
Jimmy Stewart.
This is good shit.
Big Game James, as I knew you as growing up. 20-year radio vet. I'm going on my 13th year now. Obviously, you've been at two of the biggest radio stations in the world, both here in Boston. It's funny, the other day I had some Twitter hack be like, "Who's this James Stewart? The hell's he know?" And I just was kind of like, dude, like, Jimmy's been in radio for years and like has done it all. So I know you're from Newton. I know you went to Newton South. I don't know where you went to college. I know we hang out and I don't even know this stuff.
I'm a Northeastern kid.
Okay, so you went to Northeastern Broadcasting degree? Is that what you went for?
Communications.
Okay, communications. And how'd you get into radio?
I applied at WEEI September of 2000. I was 19 years old, and I knew where I wanted to work. I wanted to work in sports radio. So over the course of 30 weekdays in August, I called, I sent faxes, and then finally, on the 30th day, I called the program director, Jason Wolf's office, and he answered, I think mistakenly so. And I said, "Hi, my name is James Stewart. I go to college. I'm looking to get in. Can you help me out?" And he said, "Yeah, fax your resume over to me." So I get on the computer. There's a little fax app on it. I fax the thing over. I get a call 2 days later from Steve Ciaccio, who's the morning show producer of Dennis and Callahan with Mita Perel. And I go in and I interview probably a few days later, maybe a week later. And I dress up and get a suit and go in, and I'm sitting in the waiting room at 116 Huntington Ave, the 10th floor. And I'm sitting next to another kid who's trying for an internship. And we're just kind of shooting the breeze. And I get told, quote, when Chach came out, I get told, "You're way too effing dressed up for this gig." And my heart kind of sunk because like this was so important to me. And like I dressed to the best of my abilities for it, go through the whole conversation. What are we going to do? What my responsibilities would be if I got hired, and so on. And then I got the call saying that I was hired and started that September of 2000.
So you like probably
then,
did like board
internship
ops.
with what's that?
I was gonna say so you have an internship and then what, a move to a board op and
Yeah,
then
I
became a producer.
interned with John, Jerry, and Meter, and it was more doing. They had a segment called Headlines,
Oh yeah.
so I'd get in at 5:30 in the morning, and I'd roll tape off of sound clips from the news, and then some clips that John Mita Perel might need, and then when I was done with that in December, I transitioned over to working with Ordway and Pete and Andy and Brett in doing an internship with the Big Show. And then when that was done, I started doing overnights and part-time work. And, I was working with Boston College Athletics for a while. I was doing Red Sox games. I did Ted Nation, Dale and Newmy, Dale and Holly. And, that's the quick version of my resume to how I got to the Sports Hub.
Quickly, you were doing middays, Dale and Holly. You were a big part of that show. Wrestling was also a big part of that show as well. At least Dale was into it. But my question to you, when the Sports Hub came out, were you like, "Oh shit, this might be like my next move"? Did you think that you could move up at EEI at the time, or was it just, all right, this is the next fit for me? I'm comfortable working with Tony and Mike, obviously with Mark as well, and it was somewhat of a seamless transition, Jimmy. I won't lie to you.
So when the Sports Hub got announced, I remember thinking, wow, so I thought 1510 was going to be a player because they had the Celtics, and at the time that they started, I didn't understand radio signals, and I came to understand it because I couldn't listen to the Celtics games with Grandy and Max because of where I lived. I had to drive closer to the ocean to get that radio signal. When the Sports Hub was announced, I remember saying to my boss, wow, like they have the Patriots, they have the Bruins. It looks like they're gathering some talent, and they got a shot here. Either we're going to be as good as we think we are and have been, or they're going to expose a lot of weaknesses that we have, we being EEI, because that's where I was at the time. And just like when I'd say that to people, they'd be blown away, like we're the best there is. Nobody's going to come in here and do that. That was the vibe that I got while nobody actually said that. So then there was, I thought I was going to be an employee there for life. and I thought I was going to move my way up the ladder and do all those types of things. It was September of 2010. So keep in mind, I became sport in March 23rd of 2011. So in September of 2010, I had an annual review with my boss, and one of the questions on the review was, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I had a vision of, hopefully getting a promotion, moving up somehow, whether that was PM Drive, whether that was a management position. And I said, the question more importantly is, where do you see me in 5 years? Because you're my boss. And he said, well, you're an excellent midday show producer, and we can put you a bunch of different places. You've got a lot of versatility. So I see you as staying pretty much where you are. And that's a paraphrase. So I kind of put that chip on my shoulder. And when the opportunity to jump and be promoted to afternoon drive came from another station, I looked into it, and thankfully I got it, and proved somebody wrong in their evaluation.
And who knows, Jimmy, those things could still be happening in radio these days with all the changes and what's next. And obviously it's been a Marconi's, you just keep adding to the resume at this point. I won't keep kissing your ass here. I won't, but I do want to ask this. People think that like there's this like battle, like, there's the Monday Night Wars and now it's the Wednesday Night Wars. It's not like that in radio, at least for us. For me, it's not. I have friends at EI. You have friends at EI. Like we respect those guys. I'm actually like it does. I still don't understand where it went wrong for them. I think it might have been the Bruins coverage, but for you, a guy who was there and then moved on, what do you think happened there? Is it management, or is it? Because to me, I still think if you have good content, you can be successful. And I think the content is good. But what happened in your mind? What happened at EI?
I think over time, tired of the same voices, and they sampled something new on an FM signal that was clear. And there are a lot of things. I'll start with people tried something new. FM. Yep. Remember, the year head start on FM, and then it was split over. EI had split it over AM and FM.
Yep.
I think the production level at the Sports Hub came through as being
yes.
Those are some very simple things. I think you also had FM skewed to a younger audience. I think that having the Patriots was key. I think that the Bruins, like here's Bruins hockey, and
yeah. You didn't make jokes of jokes of like a hockey talk minute. Here we go. Here's a minute of hockey talk. Okay, let's move on.
Hey, the Holly Hockey mid-year market.
It was. I think
the Bruins. The Bruins winning the cup early in 2011 helped greatly. The Patriots being good and all the stuff that was going along with it. And you had Toucher and Rich that was reaching a younger and a different audience. Tangway and Zoe, everybody loves Zoe. Tangway you would see on TV all the time. You had Felger, who was well established on TV. You had Maz, who was well established in the market. So from 6 to 6, you had something that was different and something that was new, and it had the FM sound. It had a better signal. The production value was higher. Things of that nature. And you had the play-by-play rights. And then, like after the Bruins win the cup, the Red Sox have this collapse, and which, by the way, I called. I have the email proof of that. I knew they were going to collapse that September. And then you have Theo and Francona leaving. And then you have John Henry coming into our studio because he's listening to us on the radio. So you had this whole momentum shift of things because everybody's looking for something new and something different and something that's, our energy was a lot higher. I think. I could go on and on, but I mean,
right.
how long do you want me to go
No,
on and on about
it's
this?
good. I wanted to get inside your head. You answered my questions, but I do want to say this for the people who listen. We do respect what they do. We like what they do there.
I mean, one of the reasons why I was so interested in jumping was Felger and Has against the Montreal news station after the Chara hit.
Yeah.
Like, I remember sitting in my car for the whole 30 minutes or so of that. And that was really like the moment where it clicked, like, wow, they're just, wow.
All right, now there's some chats coming in. I'll just leave these up here.
And
You don't
by
have
the
to
way, I
comment
don't
on
want,
them.
like, these are just like like, I don't want to bury them because
you're not.
I spent 10 years, the first 10 years of my career there.
You owe a lot. You owe a lot to them.
These are my honest evaluations of what I thought and how I felt.
Yep.
Like, this
absolutely.
is just my experience. And
absolutely. And again, and not to cut you, it just, for me, the same thing. I respect everybody over this. This isn't me shitting on I don't think we're shitting on EI. This is where you came from. You plateaued from there, and now you're at Felger Mounds, the number one station in Boston and in the country as well. So I think you know a little something there, Jimmy. This isn't you attacking anybody by any means.
Because and one thing that I want to state clearly for the record is that if I don't know Mike and Tone because of their time over there, like, I don't have this opportunity. Like, Felger came from 890, worked a year at EEI, and he was the number one fill-in and writing stories. And I garnered, at least he remembered my name enough. So, like, oh, hey, he's interested. And Mark Bertrand also was a big advocate of mine. Mark was an intern of mine at EI, and he was doing updates. And Mark and I would spend once a month, we'd go out and get drinks and just shoot the breeze. So when the opportunity came up, like, Mark was a huge add for me, and that can't be understated how important in the process of me getting to the Sports Hub.
Yep. Jimmy Stewart, 98.5, the Sports Hub, formerly of WEEI, and the highly rated Wrestling Inside the Ropes podcast, which I am able to join once a month, which I have a lot of fun doing. Some chats coming in here. When do you think the Revival will debut in AEW?
If I had to guess, the Revival pops up the next time that they start taping shows. I think AEW taped through April.
Okay. So they're through April. So it'll be after that. Did anyone throw stuff at you like Felger did to Adam Jones?
I don't understand the question.
When Felger was at 890, I guess he used to throw stuff at Jones. Your favorite AEW wrestler, Jimmy?
Oh, he called Adam Jones intern Drew.
Yeah, he called him Drew. The wrong name. The wrong kid, too. Favorite AEW wrestler?
I like Penelope Ford the most. I would say on the male side, I would say it's Matt Hardy. Sammy Guevara's excellent. I think I called him a tomato can the first night he opened up and fought Cody Rhodes. Talent there. Penelope Ford, I think, is somebody who's going to be a breakout star in wrestling on the female side of things once she starts getting more and more opportunities. I just think she's got so much talent, and she did a lot of good work in Beyond Wrestling locally. So I know that in the opportunity she succeed.
All right, Jimmy, moving on here. WrestleMania, not in front of fans. I mean, I enjoyed it for the simple fact that it was fresh content and the show must go on. What were your overall thoughts on that? And I know you have strong feelings on the Monday Night Raw after Mania. What was your just overall take on both the three of those nights, I guess?
All right, so night one, night two, um, I think I said it was terrible, which was a little strong, but you got to be strong to emphasize the point. Night two, I liked Charlotte and Rhea Ripley. I didn't love the fact that Charlotte won that match because she didn't need to. You could have had Rhea Ripley beat Charlotte clean in the middle, and now Charlotte has something to chase because Rhea Ripley would have beaten her twice, and Charlotte doesn't need the NXT title. I think Charlotte should be on SmackDown. I don't think she should be on NXT, but there are a lot of dream matches there for Charlotte to compete in. I liked the Firefly Funhouse with Cena and Bray Wyatt kind of walking through John Cena's career. The NWO thing was if Hogan had turned heel and people thought John Cena was the new Hogan, that was the play on. Interesting to know what John Cena's stable would be, but John had Villain Gear made, and they looked at the numbers and they're like, why are we turning John Cena into a bad guy? Because he's still our number one merchandise seller by far, and it's John Cena ever had of turning villain. The main event, nice to see Drew McIntyre win the world title. I would have kept it on Brock because I think Drew deserves an in-person 80,000, 20,000 seat celebration. I don't like the Raw after WrestleMania because I think that the writers are just doing it for that set of fans. So 51 nights a year, they're doing it for their big global production. But on this particular night, it's just to entertain the people there. Roman Reigns coming out the night after he beats The Undertaker, getting booed and just saying, this is my yard, dropping the mic and leaving. Like, that's how they're playing it. There was a story that was told to me that the only reason why Dolph Ziggler successfully cashed in the night after WrestleMania 29 in New York, and Dolph cashed in New Jersey, I think it was so he would shut up the crowd about Dolph cashing in, because they weren't going to push Dolph to the level that at the time he had the talent and he still has the talent, but he had the fan support to be the next Shawn Michaels if they had promoted him properly. But there are people had Vince's ear, Triple H, who aren't fans of Dolph Ziggler and what he does, and were probably annoyed at that pop that he got when he came out. But that's that's the loudest pop for a cash in at the time. You can argue the Seth Rollins pop when he cashed in on Roman and Brock at WrestleMania 31 was louder. That is still the greatest cash in ever. But as far as Dolph goes, Dolph had all the talent. He had a lot of different factors. He had Big E and AJ Lee, so they put him with people. And the reason why he cashed in was the complete wrong reason to cash it in, not to shut up the fan, but to give the fans what they want. Maybe that story isn't true, but that's the story that I heard.
Okay. And just the Boneyard match, the Firefly Funhouse match, do you think that was similar to like the Hardy Compound, the production that they did? And do you think we'll see that with AEW, obviously, with Jericho being invited there?
So, yeah, they'll do Matt Hardy and Jericho in some sort of, I think they called it All Elite Deletion or something like that. So that'll be fine. But yeah, they had a situation where they needed to be creative with things, and they could only have so many people. So the Undertaker AJ match, I thought was good drama. I thought it was interesting. I thought it was fun, and it's a way to keep the Undertaker doing matches. Now, I don't want to see another one of these until at least SummerSlam, which hopefully happens, or Survivor Series. But those done in the right instances, I think they're good things. I think they're good things to keep people interested in watching. And the Firefly Funhouse thing was just something to either continue a story or to hide that John Cena doesn't want to do a 25-minute match because he's lacking the confidence to be able to.
Yeah. Obviously, I go with you to WrestleMania. We go to many shows together. You have good relationships with wrestlers, but you cheer for certain wrestlers, and I was curious why, or is there something about a wrestler that you like to cheer for them? There's certain people you like. Charlotte, you like. Matt Taven, you like, and I know you have a relationship with him. But like, what is it about certain wrestlers that you like?
So generally, like, a lot of times I will over cheer for a wrestler because I have some type of personal relationship with them, or an acquaintance with them. I'm over the top honkish for Charlotte because she has been so giving with her time. And Joe, you witnessed this at the WrestleMania post New Orleans party. Um, there's a rib that she played on me that you actually have photo documentation of that will release one of these days. She's done a lot of nice things for me on a personal level. So that's why I'm over the top honkish for her. Matt Taven is a local wrestler, works for Ring of Honor. We met through Mike Bennett and Maria Kanellis, or Maria Bennett now because they're married. Matt and I just weed off. We're huge Celtics fans, in the same way that Eddie Edwards and I are huge Celtics fans. But I generally there are times where I establish like this wrestler is like really good and connects to me, and if they're local, then I can kind of seek out and connect with them in some way and cheer for them. Ilya Markopoulos is a friend. Brian Malonis is a friend, and I can go through a few other different ones, but I don't want to shout out everybody. But for me, being a fan of a performer, it's not just like, oh, they connect with me. But when I'm really over the top with somebody, it's because I've had some sort of personal interaction with them. Like John Cena, when he was on his first go around, he did an interview on Dale and Numi, and we just kind of connected in an acquaintance way, and he's gone on to become a big star. I think it helps that at the time he came in, I'm like, oh, you're going to be the next Ric Flair in the business. And ironically enough, I was right.
So yeah, and it's good to hear because like I always wonder sometimes like what is it with this guy and Jimmy? What does he like about this this wrestler? And all right, I get it. You answered it, and you have good relationship. And I want to ask you about the podcast in a little bit here, but
Sure.
So obviously you and Mike Rowley have put this together. So I did a podcast 2 years ago, and Dan Lifshatz worked at the radio station. I knew he liked gambling. I like gambling. And we were like, dude, we should pitch a show. And it's funny because I had Dan on the podcast this week, and I don't really know, like me and Dan, like I see him twice a week. Like we're friendly. We've gone out with our wives, but like, I don't know Dan Lifshatz. It's like I asked him questions this week and he like didn't have answers, but like, I don't, we did a podcast and it's successful, right? He does his thing. I do my thing. It's two different personalities. It's been successful, and now it's a show. And there's so many wrestling podcasts, right? We got the mortgage guy in Alabama, right? There's the 83 weeks, there's Jericho's, but there's so many podcasts, right? We got our buddy Sudi's now got a podcast, just another podcast. But, you guys have a successful podcast. A lot of people listen to it. I listen to it myself, and I like being a part of it. But where does it go here? Like, is it just the following you have and people liking to you? Like, what can be the next step? Like with Conrad and Bruce and guys like that, I don't know if it was advertising that blew them up or it was the content. I don't know. But like, they're so successful, Jimmy. These podcasts are like, you should see that, them. You see the downloads, the advertisements. Like, where do you see wrestling inside the ropes going?
So for us to probably take the next step, it would be you have to find, does Pat Patterson want to do a podcast and tell stories? It's the real money right now, it looks like, is in nostalgia podcasts. So who's the big name that's out there that can talk about wrestling in the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s, because the success of wrestling inside the ropes, quite frankly, is because 98.5 The Sports Hub, Felger, people know enough about me and my fandom for wrestling.
See, I disagree.
That has.
I disagree with that. I don't want to cut you off. I think the success of it is because you guys talk current wrestling. I think you guys relate past to present, and it's, the average fan can understand that. So like, don't sell yourself short. You have a great platform to do this, but without that platform, it's still an informative and entertaining show.
But without that platform, Joe, without the platform of the Sports Hub and the Felger and Maz show, like, I could be pumping out great weekly podcasts and they're downloaded by 5 people because I've gotten my equipment at Guitar Center and nobody cares about some random jamoke who just spent $500 on a nice microphone, a mixer, and, a podcast platform app.
Yeah.
But because of the Sports Hub and the show and the success of the station, they've taken a producer who's a wrestling fan, and enough people like the content where they keep coming back for it.
Yep, and Mike's very good at he knows his shit from the past. I will say that. And there's been times where, and I love Mike, we have to challenge him. I remember doing a show one night about NXT and saying how this is the best thing going. And now Mike loves NXT. He thinks it's the best thing going. But like, I think that's what wrestling podcast is like, I like, there's some things I'm not into, and then I listen to it, I'm into it, and I think Mike's that guy. And I think you bring like the knowledge and the passion, and this is the storytelling of it all. And I just think like you guys are a good fit for that. You push him, he pushes your buttons. And I just think it's a good podcast. So I'm not here to kiss your ass. I'm just telling you that I think you guys are pushing the button on what's fresh, and I think that's what people want to talk about.
And I think one of the things that we do well is we're not just sitting there like recapping an entire show.
Yep.
When it's not germane to. If WrestleMania weekend had I would have pulled out some other things to talk about news-wise. It's what's interesting, what do we think people are talking about? And I think one of the important things is keeping it in a 40-minute to 60-minute block of audio, because that's somebody's drive to work. That's somebody's workout. And pace is just so important. And using some of the radio ideas and concepts that I have and believe in about pacing things. Like, I don't want to sit up on the counter and just put my feet up and be like, blah, 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 blah. And for those people who listen to the wrestling podcast, like, that there are times where I start to drift off and I'm like, sorry, I'm off topic. Let's get back to topic.
Yeah. And
because
hey,
I
listen,
just don't want to be that drifter, but I also try to tie everything in together because there's a story that might be germane to the subject at hand. And it's just keeping that short and within context. And it's also, I don't want to unload my entire bucket in one podcast, because I want people coming back and being like, oh, wow, he had this piece of information that I hadn't heard anywhere else. Or he had this opinion that is unique to the show. Or like, getting back to Riley for a second, I wish he was the anti-NXT guy, because then there's a debate point.
Well, he doesn't like Seth Rollins right now.
He still hated NXT.
Well, Seth Rollins,
but
I was that same guy,
So he's out on Seth Rollins, right? And he was out on the match, but he had forgotten about that part, and I could have pulled the audio, but I didn't. I just kind of let him clear it up on the last podcast, and it wasn't as clear as it could have been or should have been. No,
I actually like. It's funny.
But
you're
I
right,
like. I don't want to. I don't want who gets the. You're right, James. You're right, because I don't want that. I don't think that's like. But I also don't want it to be fake. I want it to be natural. I want it to be real. Like, I hate Walter, and the only reason why I hate Walter is because he beat Pete Dunne right in front of my eyes at NXT Brooklyn a year ago.
Yeah.
Like, so Walter can go to hell.
Yeah, like I think Bailey sucks, and that's how I feel. I just think she's
I mean,
boring, you know.
I mean, and her telling me to move out of the way after she beat Charlotte right in, you know, but at the same time, if you get some vodka and Bailey, she's a good time.
Well, I think you guys are a good mix, and I think it is a successful podcast, and I think it'll be better. All right, a couple more things here. You just mentioned, there's things you might not have gotten in. I didn't get this in on my last podcast yesterday. The Brawl for All was this week. I enjoyed it. I want to get
Brawl for All documentary on Vice TV, Joe.
There you
just
go.
To be specific.
Okay, and I did a whole recap if you want to watch yesterday's show on it. But my question is, I want to get your thoughts on it, and my question to you: if there was a Brawl for All today, take Brock Lesnar out of it, who would win in a Brawl for All if they did it now?
Haku.
I know
he's not currently in the roster, but yeah, Haku would kick everybody's ass. Brock Lesnar is the obvious choice. I now have to think about the roster.
Like I mentioned, Jack Hager. Sorry.
Yeah, he would win. He'd be at least in the finals, but under the Brawl for All rules, you have to figure out like who's got the Golden Gloves background or who can do takedowns. It's not just like a matter of who's the toughest, right? Because if it was who's the toughest, then supposedly JBL could knock out everybody in the room, or Steve Dr. Death Williams, however many years past his prime. That Bart Gunn part of the story is so interesting to me. Where he wins the thing and then he gets sent home and it's like, oh, we're going to feed you to Butterbean to kill your push or to kill your perceived push. And he writes a letter to Vince. But the Brawl for All was just like, I wasn't into it because it was just all underneath guys. And that just doesn't, like, I love Too Cold Scorpio, but he shouldn't be in it. Like Dan Severn was smart enough to be like, this doesn't help me.
This isn't good.
The Godfather or Charles Wright should be in the finals there, but he got knocked out. So it's literally you're throwing darts at the undercard.
So we talked before. Was there a nugget you had about that?
So I still pick Haku to win the thing. You know who actually, like Braun Strowman or Big Show, somebody like that should win because you can't knock them out. You can't beat them up, but they're also not going to participate in it because they don't need to.
Okay. And finally, I know you on Felger and Madge, you guys got the big board happening this week. Whose idea was that to throw markers at a board?
I feel like it was Bertrand's, but it's either Felger's or Bertrand's or both. I don't remember exactly.
How successful is this thing?
It's something that when we get around draft time, I get text messages or tweets or emails being like, when are you starting the big board? For example, a friend of mine texted me Sunday and was like, how early are you starting the big board this year? And I go, well, we're actually doing it tomorrow. Tomorrow being this past Monday. And so we're going to ride out the big board, but it's something that's interesting. It's just different. And that's part of I think that's part of the reason why it's so successful is that it's different. And oh, by the way, we've hit on people like the Arkansas a-hole, Jake Paquette.
Yes. Jimmy Garoppolo.
We got Jimmy Garoppolo and Maz's reaction. And that's the kind of the whole point of it. And that's kind of maybe the joy of it.
Finally, Jimmy, before I let you go here, quarantine. This is what I call this segment. What are you doing at the moment with quarantine? I know you're a family man and you're actually essential, so you're going into work every day. But is there what do you watch? Is it all wrestling? Like, what else do you do, Jimmy Stewart?
So I'm gonna dig into Homeland because I've been a little bit behind on Homeland.
Okay.
So I'll probably catch up on that at some point. What I found myself doing the teen time is so I don't do a lot of politics. Just because I don't care about your politics, you don't care about my politics, and I don't want to be that person. But I do around election times. I'll spend about a week and do some background checks on this candidate or that candidate or things like that. What I found myself doing is I listen to the Trump press conference every day because I think it's the most interesting thing going right now. And it's because is Trump going to dump on some CNN reporter? Is he going to talk about some narcotics mission? Is he going to talk about some mission outside the country? Is he going to talk about gas prices? Is he going to talk about like what is going on in the world right now? Is Dr. Fauci going to come in and say something totally different than Trump is? Is there a connection of like Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, and they have connections to Fauci because Fauci's been there forever. Who is Trump listening to? Why isn't he listening to this person? There's so much data and there's just so much like content. And if you think about like what's being said, how it's being said, where there are contradictions, where there are little battles going on, like Obama hasn't supported Joe Biden. Why is that? If you're interested in my theory on it, it's because Joe Biden's going to drop out and Michelle Obama is going to be the Democratic candidate to go against Donald Trump.
Whoa.
When that happens, I don't know, but that's just a theory. If you're reading through some of the things that are going on in the world. So I go down all these deep rabbit holes on the political side of things in this time. And I read up on conspiracy theories and what does this mean? And do you read into this? And this super secret mission is actually going on. I read all of that stuff because it's all fascinating to me. I don't know what's right or wrong, but I know that in the sports world, the candy store, there are a lot of similarities between how sports people handle the media and how news people handle the media.
Awesome.
So if there's that much of a discrepancy in the candy store, what kind of discrepancy is there in the real world?
Interesting stuff there, James Stewart. Our time is up. I know you have to go to work. What's going on Felgram Mass today?
Our time is up. My time is now. You can't see me. My time is now.
Let's just leave on that note. All right, he is James Stewart, 98.5 The Sports Hub. Wrestling Inside the Ropes, highly rated podcast, everybody. Check it out. Jimmy, appreciate the time today, and I will share this with all your friends. All right, he is James Stewart. Thanks for your time today, Jimmy. And I'll wrap up this show quickly. I just wanted to bring up a few things here before we get out of here. Brandon Cooks getting passed around, man. Guys getting passed around like the bucket at church. Like how many different teams this guy gonna be on before it's all said and done? He's getting passed around like you're blunt at this point. It's like a good one, you know. He gives you a good high, and then it's like, all right, let's move on from this dude. It's literally what it's like. So people want to shit all over Bill O'Brien, and that's fine. He's made a lot of dumb trades. But how about the Rams on this one? You know, they give up the Jalen Ramsey stuff happened, so they have no first round pick. They traded the guy after March 10th, so they have 20-something million of cap space. They let go of Todd Gurley, so next year they're going to have 33 million against the cap. Like, they're not smart, the Rams. So for everybody who wants to crap on Bill O'Brien, the Rams weren't smart at all when it came to this. The other thing is, for me, is, you know, David Johnson, and now you have Randall Cobb and obviously Brent Cooks. Is that better than what Hopkins was and Fuller and those guys? I don't know. Interested to see what's going to happen. And then Deshaun Watson, right? He's a free agent, so we'll certainly see what that happens. Just wrapping up quickly here. The horse tournament is this weekend. My favorite is Chris Paul. I'm glad to see Paul Pierce is in it. And Chauncey Billups is another one. But I'm going to go with Chris Paul to win. That's on Sunday on ESPN. I think they're zooming in on those. So we can watch that live this week. And one final thing, I saw that there was an abundance of chicken wings because there was no March Madness, so a bunch of places there's just like an abundance of it. Here's my suggestion: go to Kowloon, right, and go get the Saugus wing sauce and just lather those babies up. Buy like a gallon of Saugus wing sauce. Go to whatever joint you want that has the best chicken wings, and then just roll them in. Or you can just go buy Saugus wings yourself, whatever. And I watched Field of Dreams last night, and I can't get over Shoeless Joe Jackson batting right-handed. It bothers me. That's really it for this weekend, everybody. Monday, we have a big week next week. On Monday, I'll have Michael Connolly, the formerly of the Boston Herald. He'll come on with us, get his thoughts on everything happening. He's an author. He's got a couple of books out. Wrote on the Boston Marathon and did a book recently on the 1946 Red Sox. So we'll have him on. Then we'll have more guys from the Sports Hub. And then next week, the following week is draft week. So I have Ted Johnson lined up, Mike Flynn lined up, my buddy Dr. Football. He's in there, Mike Lockhart from the Fantasy Show, and working on another guest there. So guests going on strong here for the next couple of weeks as we're in quarantine. This was my first week. Hope everybody enjoyed it. I'm going to try to get this up on a streaming site, but I prefer to do the video version of this all. So thank you to everybody who joined today. Appreciate the time, and we'll talk to you on Monday. I'm Joe Murray, just sitting there. See you then.